So I'm the surprise. I was also surprised because I found out 2 days ago I have to write a talk and give a talk. So bear with me. There are not so many slides, but it's a subject I'm really fond of. We have a very packed agenda for half an hour. Let's hope we can get through all of it. So the whole talk goes in heads and tails because every coin has 2 faces. And we start discussing the first face of the coin, the heads, which is something that a lot of companies do, and we head towards the discussion of the tails, as in something that not so many people are doing. Who am I? So I'm Daniela. I'm your surprise for today. I work in the cyber industry for about 20 years. I did different roles, and the last 6 years, it's somewhere in between incident response and cyber threat intelligence. And the question is, who are you? How many here have worked or work in incident response? And cyber threat intelligence? Oh, that's nice. That's actually nice, more than I hoped for. Let's go further. So the heads. We go to the classical approach to CTI. CTI, short for cyber threat intelligence. What happens normally when you receive some sort of hashes, IPs, domains from an external source? Your CTI team receives this, and normally somebody hunts for this to see, well, were we ever scanned or attacked by this, anything which looks alike this IP address, hash, domain, or anything like this. And if the hunting is successful and there is a hit, you are the unlucky one to start the incident process. That's how it happens in most cases. And if you are part of a mature organization, you have tooling, so you don't receive just an email with a random email or IP address or whatever list. You receive something, an input on an API, you have tooling for this. You have automation, which checks the basic stuff. You have automation to check, well, this IP address is somewhere in our logs. And the same thing happens in the end. If you have hits, you start the incident process. You can even be in a better situation. So we're going from, start a bit better. You are in a situation where you actually receive quality cyber threat intelligence. And it's more than just some hard-coded values, a list of IP addresses, or a list of domains. You receive full behavior. Well, this threat first scans for, FTP, and then tries to connect to your web server. So it's a whole behavior, a chain of events which this threat might do. You can even hear what kind of MITRE attack technique. Do we know what a MITRE attack is? Everyone heard about MITRE attack? Yes. About the same people who work in CTI. I see it. And again, we have our automation, and again, we have a hit, we have something that behaves like that and has connected to us or has breached our perimeters, then we start the incident process. Of course, the best is if you can automate as much as possible. Your incident response team doesn't want to go search IP addresses, doesn't want to go search in different tools, different domain name, or to see, this behavior might look like this in this tool and might look like that in the other tool. So you try to automate as much as possible. So these people who do incident response get to do the fun stuff. This is like the ideal situation. And this is how the normal flow of receiving intel about somebody who's actively doing an attack to using this intel to do your incident response, or in the happy case where you have no hits to say, well, I'm really sure they had nothing to do with us. Also good, really good actually. And so, if all stars align, you have automation, you have tooling, everything goes fast, and within a matter of hours, you can at least appreciate, are you affected by this? Are you not affected by this? Do we have to do anything further? Do we have to start the incident process? Or we just have evidence to say we are not affected? Because it's really good to have evidence. So the question is, who attacks us? So if you are part of an incident response team, You normally work with incidents, and it's not always an incident like a full-on ransomware or a breach or somebody exfiltrating. Sometimes it's the random person who exploits your web server, and then they try to go further to your database. Sometimes you catch it that fast. But what if you notice this as a trend? The incident response team can have 2 or 3 incidents like this. The same exploit, the same web server, some actor tries then to go further to your database. And you see that these actors, this person who attacks you, they are skilled. They're just not a person doing an nmap to scan all your ports. They are actually taking an interest on your particular setup. So it's not the guy who's hitting your honeypot, because a lot of generic searches all across public space of IP addresses will hit your honeypot. But we're speaking about this actor who has a specific interest on your setup, who actually does the next step after finding a vulnerability. It's actually exploiting it and trying to go further. So if the right tooling is available to the incident response team, they will see there is a trend. Sometimes they remember about it, as somebody told me yesterday. But sometimes you have the tooling. So what is the next step when you find out you have a repeating incident and it's actually breaching your perimeter, it's actually creating impact, and it's the same behavior? You try to mitigate. So you try to mitigate, you try to see if it's a design step which you have missed maybe. Maybe this web server wouldn't be so hard attacked if it would be a web file in front of it. Or maybe there is a patch missing. Or maybe some developers are not really eager to write secure code. So you try to mitigate. But anyway, you try to fix it one way or another. So the question is, what happens with this information? So what's the other side of the coin? So we have an attacker. They come, they produce some impact. Another attacker, maybe, or maybe the same, come, produce impact, we try to fix. What happens with all this collection of evidence and the logs and the documentation from the incident team after the incident? Where does this all go? Black hole? Maybe. And what is this collection of evidence in the end? There's some domain names. There is this domain, I don't know, test.top. .top is a popular extension that, nowadays, which has sent emails to phish us. Or there is an attacker from this IP who tried to go to a web server, and another attacker from another IP who does the same technique. Or there is some hash because they actually exploited the web server and they put a PHP implant in there. So there are a list of things which look very much like, what do they look like? We told this list before as a joke here because they're like in Linux, but we also, the tail of the coin. Because this looks very suspicious, much like the kind of intel you receive. It actually is the intel you wish you would receive. Because there's nothing better than the intel tells you, well, this guy has interest in you. So it's the intel you didn't get from other, but you wish you would. It's the intel about the special attacker who did an effort to breach our network. So they didn't scan the whole range and they accidentally hit our honeypot. They did the special effort just for us. There's the intel which also shows you the weakness in your setup which you probably didn't identify before there, because otherwise you would have fixed it. So that's the result of incident response. The intel you wish you had before, in most cases. So basically, this information is every CTI's team come true. Because if next time you receive this 5 minutes before the incident, maybe you can stop it, maybe. So there is the missing link in most companies. And this talk refers a bit also on a talk in the morning. So when you have a CTI program and you are at the beginning, you try to ingest information from local sources, like the local security NCC in the case of the Netherlands, or free sources like the Circle for MISP. You try to ingest intelligence and to use it, because ingesting is not enough. Use it. But there is another flow, the flow of information from incident response towards CTI, which is highest quality intelligence because it's the attacker who just attacked us right now. And the question is, why would I care? Because, you told me I have to hunt for it, but I already hunted for it. So what do I have to do with it? Why is that important to give it back to the CTI? The answer here is enrichments. Because you give back to the CTI a list of behaviors, of IPs or domains, everything that you know about your attacker. But what CTI team does with this information, they try to enrich it. For example, in a case of a domain, to see how old is the domain, who owns this domain, where is it being bought, is it associated with other domains which maybe are associated with an well-known actor who does this other sort of attacks we weren't even looking for. So these enrichments, it's why it's actually worth to feed the information after an incident back to the CTI team. Ideally, you want this to go back to the same process you went before. So you have to enter the CTI with a list of IOCs, behaviors, hashes, whatever, and you want automated hunts for the simple things, or the incident response team or the SOC to do further hunting for the more complex behavior. Once the data has been enriched, you can do the same process again. It's actually really worth to do the same process again, because if this actor has an interest in your company, they probably do the other things for which they have tooling to do. So let's say we got back to our example. So we have the incident in which there was a web server, somebody exploited the web server, and I tried to go to the database. What we found out after the enrichment, that the same actor maybe has tooling to also scan for, another type of server or FTP servers in your environment, or a type of firewalls, or they have they actively exploit the one firewall that comes a lot in the news. So what you want to know is, did they do that with us too? Because we know from CTI now that it may be the same actor. So that is where this flow of information is definitely worth to go the other way as well. So, what are the conclusions here? Automate. So, the life of the incident responder is quite hectic. It can be a lot. It usually is a lot. It's not always the active breach. It's proving we are not affected when we have maybe some hit of an IP address connecting to us or us connecting back to a domain. Evidence-based is everything. Have the incident responder life eased by automating as much as possible, by having tooling. I'm not speaking about even very expensive CTI tooling to start with. If you're in the beginning, there's something called MISP. It's free. Maybe it takes 2 or 3 trials to set up because certain versions are not so stable, but there is a way to use this information automated. It has an API. You can feed information. You can connect it to all your sources. You can even connect it back to your whatever tooling you use for incident response to gather evidence. So that makes the incident responder's life, when they have to hunt, or the SOC person who has to hunt, that makes their life easy and fun, because they have to do the most complex things, the most interesting things. They have to go down the rabbit hole and imagine things out of whatever information of behavior they have. Document whatever they found. Again, because every time you document, you hit back the same cycle. You go back towards CTI, you go back to feed in a basic hunting, you go back to enlarge your incident response. That's why, so this incident response towards CTI, this flow, it's what we call intel, which is evidence-based. Because in this case, I don't have to believe you. You're a good source, maybe, but maybe you're not such a good source of intel. And maybe you just put in your list of domains that I have to worry about google.com by accident, So it's external sources with much more or less credibility versus intel, which you just had evidence that they actually did the thing. So it's very accurate intelligence. And in this case, we can say happy hunting. Well, in this picture, basically, because I abuse AI for this talk, in this picture, it's Not so happy hunting, for one reason, because there is no planning in there. Huh? There's this cat trying to shoot randomly, destroying your house, and the mouse is still alive, which happens in a lot of incident response cases. It happens a lot if you do not scope well your incident response, that basically you do this, instead of guacamole, you do this shooting the mouse who's still alive, because you do not look deep enough. Let's say that the actor you observe attacking your web server normally implants a DLL on a server. If you don't know that, and you don't look for it, you solve your incident, and 2 weeks later, guess who has a subscription to this actor, because they'll be back, they have the DLL in there, and they'll probably try to do something else. That's a stable diffusion AI. So this is a subject which is one of my favorite peeves lately, because I see this a lot of time gets lost. A lot of times an incident gets solved and then documentation is somewhere on a share, or the external party who has helped you after an incident, if it's a larger incident, gets disclosed with the management and it stays there. It actually never arrives part of a tooling. It never gets enriched. And this is why we see a lot of times that after a breach, the same company, a few months later, it's part of another breach with a slightly different behavior. Because, that actor maybe who ransom you, they promise you they won't come back. But somebody else is, and there's a link, and, this kind of stuff. So that's why the enrichment of the intel, which is a result of your incident response, it's very important. It's very important also for you to give you a bit more certainty. I'm sure I eradicated the right things, or I'm sure I have seen the entire scope of this actor. Because nobody randomly breaches your server and moves laterally to another server. That's not a random act. That's with purpose. So, are there questions? I have a question. Before you ask the question, I have a question. How many of you do this? Feed the incident response findings back to the CTI team. There's people who do it. I'm happy. I already heard it. I'm happy. Questions from you?
Thank you so much.
And next year, there'll be a cake for the surprise speakers.
Are there
jump out.
Nobody has questions. Oh, yes. Here you go.
Thank you. How do you determine if something is actual intelligence, and how do you input all the data from every incident into the CTI process?
If it's an incident about somebody actively breaching you, that's intelligence. If it's random scans, so the average internet behavior, it's not that important. I mean, normally you take care of that by automated blocking of some firewall which drops if you try more than 400 times something, this kind of stuff. But if it's an active breach, somebody give you very special attention, you definitely want to know more about them.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Anyone else? Nope. Okay. Well, then you were very good. Very good surprise. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.